Hello and welcome to the Football Man Cave chats with Tom Kennedy, former Bury, Rochdale, Leicester and Barnsley left back. How are you doing, mate? You okay?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
I'm sweating.
Yeah.
Just say it's got really hot on it now.
Very hot and very humid, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm in the middle of this charity bike ride. I'm covering all the grounds that
Brilliant.
we cover on the website.
Yep.
And I went out on Wednesday morning and the heat was probably the most unbearable heat I've ever been in. I couldn't wait to get it there and back. It was like 3 hours of torture.
When it's hitting 30 degrees, that's when it starts getting really, really toasty, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially if you any sort of exercise and you're just dripping.
I thought as well if I go out early, I might have missed it, but it was like 20 degrees from 6 in the morning, something, wasn't it? A little bit of rain start again. Let's not complain about weather.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right, we're going to take you back through your career. Did you start off as a centre midfielder? Is that right?
No. Well, I played. It's one of them. Being probably one of the better players when I was younger. I was always a left back. But for school, they chucked me in centre mid because I was probably a bit wasted at left back. But throughout my career, the whole time I've always played left back. Only marginally for school and for town team I played centre mid, but that's only 12, 13 and 14, they're them sort of ages. But throughout all my youth team days, and then obviously breaking to the first team was always left back.
And then you just go to Bury as a left back because you went through the youth system, didn't you?
Yeah, Bury? So I played for a local team called Woodbank. We were like the best team in the area. So when the Centre of Excellence started at Bury, they just said to our manager at the time, a man called Paul Gaskell, we want you to be Bury manager. Can you take it on? He said, yeah, I'll just bring my whole team because we got a few from other clubs, but mainly it was the core of it was our Woodbank team. So he just brought all the players, and I think it was about 9. I was about 9-year-old when I first went to Bury, and then obviously worked my way through up until signing YTS forms when I was 16.
Yeah, did you make 143 appearances for Bury?
Yeah,
that was. That's quite a start to a career, and it's like the 5-year period.
Yeah, people forget that. It's kind of strange, really, because I was a 17-year-old local lad who broke into the first team, and then sort of from 18 to 21, rarely missed a game, especially for the first 2.5 years. I don't think I missed. I played consecutive. I'd say nearly 100 games, and for a young lad to have that sort of constant, game time, it takes its toll. I was sort of said to be quite a hot prospect at one point, and it kind of get to a point where I think I was sort of, just going through the motions, getting game by game, sort of ticking them off, but probably not doing myself any justice because at that time as well, Bury weren't exactly a sort of, high flying team or anything like that. We were sort of relegation fodder. We had a lot of senior players, lads coming towards the end of their careers, so. Don't get me wrong, it was an amazing club to be at because there was a real togetherness within the dressing room. It was proper old school mentality, but it was also a very harsh one. And for a young lad sort of breaking into that, it would have been probably benefited me to be taken out and rested here and there. But we didn't really have the resources to be able to do that at that time because, we had 11 probably first team players and you've got a couple of subs and the rest were made up of, sort of third year pros and stuff like that were sort of trying to break into the first team. So, although it was, it's strange because I think I can't actually work. You'll probably have it there, but I actually think I probably played more games for Bury than I did for actually Rochdale.
Yeah. It's not far off, to be fair.
Yeah, they're pretty close, and people don't really take that into consideration. It's kind of strange because it gets a bit lost in the wash, really. But like you said, from sort of 17 to 21, I battered out, a lot of games in a quite a short period of time.
And what league were Bury in at that point? Was there floating between League 1 and League 2?
No, just straight up League 2. We were always fighting off relegation. It was sort of tough, like I said, in that sense because the resources and the money were not there. The club was struggling massively. I think that's the time that we got sort of called the Bury Buckets and that sort of thing because obviously times were hard. Like I said, we didn't have the resources that they've had over the past sort of last 10 years or so in recruiting players. Like I said, it was a great system because they brought a lot of good young players through at that time, which was fantastic. But at the same sense, it was a harsh environment. To come into League 2. League 2 was a lot different back then. You had to stand up and be counted, and it was very much a physical game. And I'm not the biggest, so it was one of them where you either sort of went out there and stood up and sort of cracked on with it, or you sort of fell by the wayside. And I somehow managed to sort of stick in there, and obviously it came to the end when I was 21, but I wouldn't change it for the world. It was an upbringing that's probably held me in good stead, not only through my career but now, sort of finishing football and going into something else. I always believed that the upbringing at Bury in that environment was very much what's sort of held me in good stead throughout my career.
Who was the manager around that time?
My first manager was Andy Priest, and then he got the bullet, and then Graham Barrow took over, and Graham Barrow pretty much played me non-stop throughout his tenure there, and then Chris Casper came in, and that was the end for me that season that he came in. I think I only played sort of 20 games that season, and then I left that summer.
Who was like who was the guy you looked up to in that time? Because obviously, like I say, you were quite young, and it was like a baptism of fire, and coming into football by the sounds of it. So who was the guy who sort of took you under his wing?
Honestly, at that point, I could like literally just name 10 names, because there was a real togetherness. Like I said, it was an old school mentality. Like, look, don't get me wrong, we probably drank too much, we probably went out too much, but that's what it was back then. And if I wasn't, we would go out on the Saturday, and then the lads would be saying, well, we're going to meet you, and the Welly on the Sunday, we used to meet down there and have drinking then, and sometimes on a Tuesday night as well, which probably wasn't great for a young local lad to be doing that sort of thing. But we're all doing it. There's likes of myself, Martin Forrest, Danny Swales, Lee Connell, Matty Barras, Paul O'Shaughnessy, proper. These are all local lads that around that time that sort of like to socialise, like to spend time with each other, and we looked after each other. And it was a harsh, it's not so much you can't get away with things that got away with then, sort of the laughs that we had and the things that we did and stuff like that. But they took me under the wing, and like I said, I wouldn't change it for the world, because it's held me in good stead, and it makes you not easily offended and stuff like that, because that we used to tear each other to pieces on a daily basis. But as a mentor actually at the club, probably Colin Woodthorpe, who was the left back at the time, as a sort of mentor and a sort of model pro. He was the person that you'd probably look up to the most. The things that he did and the way he conducted himself, I've always held him in high regard. And he's always tried to look after me, even though we played the same position, which I think is a really good trait in somebody that, even though he could probably tell that I was coming through and was probably going to take his spot at some point, he was more than happy to sort of give me guidance and help me, because he'd obviously played in the European Cup for Norwich and done great things with them. So he was a very much a good role model for me. And I came through with young lads that have gone on to have good careers, like Dave Nugent, Nicky Adams, one of my close friends, had an amazing career, and they're the sort of lads that I came through the youth system with. Another one, Colin Kazim Richards, who's gone on to have a great career. So we had some great people within that time that came through as well. So it was a real good place to be, and a great place to sort of learn my trade. Like I said, there was probably quite a few better players than me that didn't make it, but I suppose they didn't really have the sort of mental strength to sort of see it through. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Got asked on Twitter last night, at Groundhopper101. He said, "Did you want to leave Bury first time round, or was it out your hands?"
Yeah, actually, I think it's one of them that's it's not really been spoken about. But obviously, Bury at that time were going in a different direction, and I'd been there a few years, and me and Chris Casper, it wasn't that we didn't see eye to eye. It was just a purely footballing decision. He believed that I wasn't right for the way that he wanted to play, and I was like, well, I would obviously want to stay, but everything happens for a reason. And at that time, I don't think Bury fans really got, because it's not like it was now where social media, I could go on there and say, well, Bury didn't offer me a contract. It wasn't like that. It was sort of Chinese whispers, and Eddie was saying, well, I chose to leave. Well, no, I didn't. Obviously, I've got a lot of family history with the club. I love the club. My dad played for 10 years there. I used to go and watch him when I was a young lad. My dad used to take me. Made my debut for them, came over through the youth system, and then obviously got released. I got told that I wasn't getting offered a contract, and I had no other offers, basically. So it was either come up. Well, I had no football league offers. I had a couple of conference offers. So it was a case of, do you want to carry on being a professional footballer, or do you want to step out of the league and do something different? And I was lucky enough that Dave Flitcroft had gone to Rochdale with Keith Hill, and Flickers had obviously played with me at Bury, and obviously he liked me as a person, liked me as a player, so they give me an opportunity, and it just happened to be that Rochdale were local rivals. But I didn't want to leave, and I got released. That's the forefront of it, and obviously, like I said, it's different back then because I just got on with my job. I didn't really think too much about it, and then obviously it came out that people were saying that I chose to leave and stuff like that, which wasn't the truth. So no, it's one of them things. But
and then what was it like going from Bury to Rochdale? Because obviously people don't really know it's quite a rivalry, isn't it? Like there's literally a stretch of road between the two teams and the two grounds.
Yeah, and I knew that because obviously I'd grown up around here, and obviously, but it's like one of them things. I had no choice, and that time Rochdale was probably a club on the up, which probably didn't help the situation because we had a really good side at Rochdale, but I knew the rivalry was there. But I just what was always a sort of a gripe for me was the fact that people never really took into consideration the fact that I had no choice basically. It was either that or quit my job and do something different. And I was living my dream and I wanted to be a footballer, so I had no choice but to go to Rochdale, and it worked out fantastic in the end. Like I said, if it happened 10, 15 years later, it would all been brushed under the carpet because you can go on social media and you can say I had no choice but to go to Rochdale. So but I knew about the rivalry. And it is a intense rivalry. It's a good rivalry. And obviously we'll probably get onto it at some point about what's going on with Bury, but it's a rivalry that I can guarantee that 99% of Rochdale fans will miss, and they'll be hoping and praying. No matter how bitter and resentful they are, they'll be praying that Bury somehow comes back to a point where they can have that rivalry back again, because what is football if you don't have rivalries? I mean, it's that nobody really wants to constantly go down to London or constantly play against teams that there is no sort of little bit of edge, because that's what makes proper great games and proper good atmospheres.
Yeah, I mean, I'm from Heywood, so I'm literally in the middle of sandwiched between Bury and Rochdale. And them days, we went out around Heywood, you'd have the mix of Rochdale and Bury fans, and there was always, it's a good occasion. I've been to many a Bury and Rochdale match, and like I say, around here, it's quite a big rivalry, and it's a big day out. It's like one of the first fixtures to look at. No one really, if they're in the same league, it's like, right, when have we got Bury or when have we got Rochdale? And then a lot of the times, a lot of families are split, aren't they? Because obviously it is that close that you have sort of within family rivalries. And like it's a massive shame that obviously what's happening at Bury is happening at the minute, there's no conclusion to that, is there, whatsoever at the minute with Bury? There's no like.
That's the worst thing, isn't it? That's the worst thing that everybody's having to deal with. If it was sort of dead and buried and everybody said, well, there is no Bury anymore, then you could probably try and learn to deal with it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I suppose it's a bit like losing a family member. Like, you come to terms with the fact at some point that they're not going to be here anymore. Whereas at the minute, Bury's still actually a football club. And there's the same situation that's been going on for the past whatever amount of time, where somebody's still in control of the actual name and the actual club itself. But doesn't seem to be doing anything about it, and nobody can quite grasp or work out. I know it's sort of not nowhere near talked about as much as it used to be, but there's he's not come out and done any statements recently. He's not come out and said, like, this is what I'm doing. I know he applied to go in the conference, the National League, so I don't know where that's up to, but it's a massive, we all know it's a massive shame, and it's bad for the fans are obviously. I got my car MOT the other day, and one of the lads in there's a huge Bury fan. He was talking about his granddad. He's only not seen Bury play at one ground. That's Tottenham, with White Hart Lane, I think it was. Wow. Obviously they're not there now, and he's been supporting him for 60 years or something crazy like that. And he was just saying, well, he doesn't know what to do with himself, and I tried to say, well, why don't you come and watch Rami, because that's where I'm at now. But you can tell it's just never going to be the same, because these fans live and breathe that football club, and until, like I say, Steve Dale comes out and actually says what he's actually planning, whatever it is, whether it's to run the club into the ground and completely, go kapump, or actually try and do something, then I don't think them fans can ever sort of cut it off and say, I'm done with Bury, sort of thing, because it's always going to be in the back of the mind that, well, there is still actually a club there.
Yeah, well, that's it. And we've said this on the website. That transparency, if you just come out and sort of said, like you say, I'm running it into the ground and doing X, Y, and Z, or I want to do this, instead of just obviously coming out with the statements and the stories it's been coming out with, it'd be easier. I think everyone's got a kind of taste, obviously, through the pandemic of life with no football. But obviously, Bury fans, this is just life, isn't it? Like they've got no project restart. You know what I mean? They've got no season to look forward to. There's a flittering of a Phoenix club, but again, it's that Bury fan base is so divided that it's you have sort of about three different fractions in there, and it's just a complete mess. That really does need sorting out. I was actually there. I was doing the bike ride, and I was going Bury and Radcliffe, and even the ground, it's just a waste. I mean, you go to that ground, and that ground is such a decent ground. The pitch is looking decent.
Yeah.
The kid I used to go there, my uncle was a steward, and it's a great little club, and it just seems to be wasted, and it is an absolute shame, definitely.
Yeah. So. And like you said, obviously they've started the AFC Bury, the application to go in, the North West counties or whatever they're trying to go into. But like you said, that there is fractions, and there is, I always fear for the sort of fan-owned clubs. You've seen it with FC United. They get to a certain point, and Bury shouldn't be down nowhere near that level. If they did, I think they'd always have problems in actually getting to where they'd want to get to, because a lot of fans would never sort of be happy. Some would, but a lot wouldn't be happy being a mediocre, Evo Stick Prem side or a Conference North side. Bury needs to be where it deserves to be, and the history that it's got, and it deserves to be, a Football League side. So when the fan owned, like you've seen with FC United, that it gets to a point sometimes where you can't really make a decision because there's too many too many people with too many opinions, basically, to actually make a decision. So, I really do hope that somehow they do get accepted if it is the National League, and they can use that ground, because, like you said, it's a really nice ground, and they just go back to basics. They sort of try and redevelop the youth setup, because there's a lot of good local players. There always has been around here. Coming from when I started there, they had a great youth setup, really good, good coaches, and I honestly believe if they did that, work from the ground up, restructured everything, I honestly believe it could, Bury could come back and be a profitable company within itself, and go back to being a great football club, not owned by charlatans at the end of the day. So that's the dream. You just need to find somebody that's going to somehow persuade him to sell it or to pass it on, and then somebody who's really into a massive project to try and sort of, like I say, build from the ground up and lay the foundations for the next 100 years. It's not going to be easy, but I suppose the main stickling point was what it's always been, is a bit of an egomaniac who's actually acquired the club. So that's that. Yeah.
Totally agree, and we'll move on.
Yeah.
So you went on to Rochdale after that, and you made 137 appearances in that time. And I was reading as well. Was it two playoff finals? Was it two playoff finals you lost, or was it just two playoffs? Was it like semis?
One semis, one.
3 attempts to go up, didn't it, Rochdale?
Yeah, we got beat in the playoff final against Stockport at Wembley, 3-2, and then we got beat in the semi-final playoffs against Gillingham over 2 legs. I think they beat us 1-0, I think it was, or 2-1, something like that. Yeah, so we lost 2 in a row. Obviously hard to take, but fair, credit to us. Went back and in the third year should have won the league comfortably, and then had a bit of a hiccup towards the end of the season, but then still ended up going up, which was always the end goal and the dream, and managed to do it third year.
And what was it like going up? Because obviously Rochdale had been in League 2 at that point for, I don't even know off the top of my head how many years.
Oh, so yeah, it was a long time. Yeah. Oh, unbelievable. It was. It's like anything. I had a few promotions whilst I played, but that was probably one of the highlights, because of the group of lads that we had, and because we'd failed twice. We got to the playoff final, we got to the playoff semis. It's a long old slog. Them seasons down in League 2, but we had a great team spirit, great work ethic. The club was united. Like I say, Hilly and Flickers at the time we had such a great sort of team ethic, work ethic, and team spirit that transpired all throughout the club. From the directors and chairman down to all the fans, everybody was in it together, and we knew we were going to go up at some point as long as we could keep the same sort of squad together, and he did that for the 3 years. He just, to be honest, added little bits of quality here and there that maybe we couldn't quite get us over the line the first 2 years, and it was another great season, and when I look back now, even the first 2 seasons when we didn't go up, they were still great seasons, and we had, like I say, you look back at them times, and promotion's great, but it's the actual people in the dressing room that you look back on and think, little memories, little sort of thoughts about who was actually in the dressing room when you rack your brains and you think, wow, what a character he was and what story he was about him and that sort of thing. And that's what actually, when you sit back in the cold light of day and think, you've come across some right strange people, do you know what I mean? But some absolute crackers as well, do you know what I mean? So it's good to look back on that. Like I said, that promotion was fantastic, and it was driven by at that time Hilly and Flickers, who in my opinion did something completely different than any other manager that I'd had before. And obviously Liverpool win the league last night, and I'm not. You can it's not a comparison, but the way that Jurgen Klopp is with his players, that's what Hilly tried to transpire a long time ago with his play. That's how he started off. We were like, not only was he manager and Flicker's manager, they were our friends. Like if we went for a beer, which we did, probably we'd have team nights out probably, once every couple of weeks. He'd be having a beer with us. Do you know what I mean? He'd be on a night out, and it wasn't like your manager was there and you had to be acting any different, because half the time him and Flicker's the ones that were absolutely acting like, crazy men. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So that's the team spirit that and sort of that he created and we created. And he gave us that freedom to do that, and there was no sort of sergeant major, and there was no sort of head teacher like some managers are. He was very much involved. We won together, we lost together. He was honest with us, and that's the most important thing you can ask for a manager as well. Do you know what I mean? If we were crap, he'd tell us we were crap, and if we were good, he'd tell us we were good, and that's a very important thing as well. So yeah, it was brilliant.
I think people underestimate for lads how much of a booze up can bring a group of lads together. It's crazy that like you have that mentality, even if just like going into a normal workplace or whatever. As soon as you have a group of lads and you have a good couple of nights out and everyone's on a level, you will do absolutely anything for anyone. And obviously for you, it was on the pitch, weren't it, in that aspect? What was it like then under Keith Hill for 3 years? Then what type of manager was he? Was he one of the lads, or did he have a little bit of a line here and there of like, right, we need to do X, Y, and Z now?
No, there was no line. Look, when on the training pitch, him and Flickers you were 100% focused on training, and if you weren't doing your job, there was no let off days. There was no, he wanted to create a mantra of you work hard and you play hard. You work your socks off when you're training, and in your downtime. And if you're winning games and you're playing well, then that for him that was all that mattered. But you had to work your socks off in training. You had to improve, and if you weren't improving, he'll pull you up on it. And you can see that, because if you went back and looked at the players that actually were at Rochdale and have actually gone on to do great things, Glenn Murray, Craig Dawson, they improved under Keith Hill massively. He got the best out of players. Now some players would fall by the wayside because he'd worked them to a point where they'd be like, you could either go one way or the other. You could either sort of buy into the system, buy into the Keith Hill way, or you could go the other way and try and rebel against it. And there was only ever going to be one winner, and that's always going to be the manager. He just wanted you to get to a point where you basically you're saying, my cards are all in, I'm committing, and that's all he wanted. And like I said, 90% committed. And when you did do that, like I said, you became a better player, you became a better person, because that's what he instilled: hard work. There's no sort of shortcuts to it. You've got to work hard. And if you've got ability, and even if you've not, and he did that with some people, he created them, machines by lads that weren't great, particularly players. But if they did what he told them to do, and if they worked hard, then they played games, and they did a good job when they were called upon. So yeah, he wanted to create a machine that was well oiled, and we worked hard. Probably I'd say we you can't say it because everybody says it, but I'd say we were fittest in the league. But also we looked after each other. We socialised together. We'd go for a beer on a Saturday or Sunday, all of us together, and we'd all be in and around it would be all causing mayhem. And like I said, he was never one to say like, oh, don't do that, or don't do that, because he'd be involved anyway. So them 3 years, like I say, with Keith and Flickers, it was an unbreakable bond. And I think within that, I could see him in the pub, or I could see him down the shops, and I don't see him that often anymore. But you know, it's like when you've not seen your best mate for a few years or whatever. You still have that bond, you still have that togetherness, because you've created them memories together. And it's the same with that whole team. You could do that as well. You know, some really sort of great memories created by working your socks off and winning games. That's what it's all about. So yeah, 3 fantastic years. And like I said, I'd say 3 of my most enjoyable ones under Keith there.
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the questions was, do you think that first spell at Rochdale was the best spell of your career? Statistically, obviously, you scored 9 goals in that period, which is the most you've scored for a club to date. So do you feel like that was like your purple patch or such there, or was it the startings of it?
Yeah, it was my most consistent, because I pretty much played, every game possible. So, probably from 21 to 24, I'd say, played my best football without a doubt. I think I won League 2 Defender of the Year 1 year, got in Team of the Year twice. So it was obviously a very good time, and that's what transpired in me getting, obviously, the move from Rochdale to Leicester. So, like I say, everything happens for a reason. I was meant to leave Berwick at that time, meant to go to Rochdale under Keith, because, I do believe he got the best out of me. He pushed me. He constantly challenged me, which I need. I need somebody to be on my back, even though he used to drive me up the wall, because he'd be constantly shouting at me, and I'd be like, just give us a minute, give me a minute. But, that he knew he had to do something to try and keep me motivated, because probably at some points I could have took my foot off the pedal. Been quite happy to be a League 2 player for the next 10 years. And, he wanted to win things. He wanted to evolve his career. And he knew that by pushing his players, the ones that he knew he could get more out of, it'd enhance his career and ours as well. So, yeah, fair play to him.
What do you think on that final third season with Rochdale? What was the difference? Was there a certain player he brought in, or was there a certain ingredient that it all seemed to click to get that push into League 1? Sorry,
I don't think the personnel changed too much from the season before. I think we had Chris Dagnall and I think Chris Daggers and Adam Lafondra up front. I think they scored a hatful between them, and then I think Gary Jones had a really, really good season. He was always a driving force in our team. He was a fantastic captain, great leader, and I think he scored a few goals. But I think it was just an experience thing as well, because we had Chris O'Grady as well. I think really good, solid players who, like I said, would experience 2 sort of playoff sort of heartaches, and we knew how to get over the line this time. I think it came with a bit more experience and a bit more sort of savviness. Sort of digging in and getting results when maybe we weren't playing particularly well and going away from home. I think it was just a case of learning from what we'd previously failed, sort of thing.
And then from Rochdale, obviously they went up to League 1. Leicester came in for you. They were in the Championship at that point, I think, 2000.
Yeah, they were.
Obviously a massive step up for yourself. Was that for you, like, right, obviously I've had this great 3 years, now my career's going to take off and start going further and further up the ranks?
Yeah, it was strange, because I'd met Sean O'Driscoll, who was Doncaster manager, a few weeks before, and I was pretty keen to sign at Doncaster under him. And then I went on holiday to Portugal, and I got a phone call from my agent saying, Leicester want to sign you.
Right.
And I thought, this is a bit out of the blue. So they said, right, we'll fly you back from Portugal, come and sign for Leicester. We negotiated and everything was sorted. So they flew me back, signed, but I didn't meet the Nigel Pearson was the manager at the time, but I hadn't met him. So basically flew me back, signed, then flew me back to Portugal, finished the rest of my holiday. 2 days to go to end of my holiday, and Nigel Pearson was out there. So he rang me and said, him, Steve Walsh and Craig Shakespeare were out there. So went and met him in Figo's bar, had a few beers. Great guy, unbelievable. Like I say, about going back to how Hilly was and how Nigel is, the same sort of ethics about who they are as men. Nigel's very much a people person in the sense of he wants to get the best out of his players. If you're not in favour, then he lets you know. He's honest with you, tells you how it is. Liked him straight away, and he said, "Yep, I'm happy for you to sign, and I'm happy you've signed, and yeah, we're looking forward to the season." 2 days later, he went to Hull, so I'd just signed, and he just he didn't let me know, but well, basically him and Craig Shakespeare and Steve Walsh had gone to Hull, so that was that, and that's when Paulo Sousa, he came in. He was manager now, and like you said, I was thinking, well, Nigel was there, and he'd already told me that there's a good chance I was going to play. I was going to have to fight it out with the left back at the time, who was Bruno Berner, who was an ex-Swiss international, another great pro. So it was between me and him, but it was a level playing field. And when Paulo Sousa came in, he wanted to bring a lot of his own players in, a lot of foreign lads. He wanted to play a certain way, which was fine. But it never really sort of got going. I broke into the team just as Paulo was about to get sacked. We played Norwich away, I think it was. And that was his last game, and he played me that game. I think we got beat 3-2. And then he got sacked pretty much after that. So it was a bit of a stuttering start for me with Nigel leaving and Paulo coming in and changing things around quite a bit. So not quite how I'd hoped it to go, but I can't really sort of complain too much. It's a fantastic football club. It was a great opportunity for me to go there. And I didn't play as much as I wanted to for that short period because Bruno Berner was there, and he's a fantastic model pro who was a good player. So at that time, Paulo Sousa preferred to play him instead of me, which is an understandable decision because I always back myself to hopefully do well when I played, but he didn't really put a foot wrong. So I'm not one of them people that's going to be bitter and resentful. I'm just going to tell the truth, and he did a good job. So got to sort of hold your hands up sometimes.
You went back to Rochdale on loan now, so online then. On loan, was that again just getting game time in just to keep yourself ticking over?
Yeah,
they were in League One as well, I presume, weren't they?
Yeah, they were in League One, so I went back on loan there. But it was one of them. It's kind of weird. It's like I went back on loan, but it wasn't the same. The whole sort of the team had changed. Quite a few different players had come in. Quite a few players had left. And not just that, the whole dynamics of the actual dressing room had changed. Like Hilly and Flickers were a little bit different around the players and stuff like that. So I think I went, was it 6 games, I think, or 8 or something like that?
Yeah.
And they wanted to extend to the end of the season, but I said I'd rather not. It's one of them where you go back and you think, no, it's not really. I need to sort of, I've been there. Obviously, got the opportunity to go and play at Peterborough, which was another, I'd say probably up there with the most enjoyable times of my career. Was hard, obviously, because it's the first time I've properly lived away. I had to live in Peterborough. But again, with Aaron Ferguson, brilliant manager, played a certain way, and we had a great team. That season, we got promoted from League One to the Championship. I played pretty much all the games, and then was playing at Dagenham away. Got a bad tackle, did my knee, and I missed the last 4 or 5 games. And then unfortunately I couldn't play in the playoffs either, where they played at Old Trafford and got promoted against Huddersfield. So I missed that as well.
Yeah.
But fantastic club to be at that time. Had some great players. We had George Boyd, Joe Lewis was in there, Ryan Bennett played centre half, Mark Little, Lee Tomlin, Craig McHale-Smith, Aaron McLean, some Tommy Rowe, some real good players. A thoroughly enjoyable time, loved it. Again, another club that I played at where the manager bought into everything. He got on well with the players. He'd hammer the players if they needed hammering, but he'd also, reward them for doing good things. We had a right good team spirit. We'd go out together, we'd socialise together. Really enjoyable time.
And then, did you get the offer to go to Peterborough full time after had to sign on permanent?
At the end of that season, my knee was recovered and they were in the Championship, and we were discussing to go there full time, and then they said, well, we'll just do a loan till January. So I went on loan to January, played every game, and then we were discussing a permanent deal, and Nigel Pearson got the job back at Leicester.
Yeah.
So he recalled me, And he said, look, from the end of the season till now, I need you in my squad. You're a good lad. You'll probably play a few games, but you're not going to play every game, because at that time, Paul Konchesky was left back at Leicester, and another great model pro who was a really, really good player. So I ended up going back. I think I played 4 games. I think I made my debut against Crystal Palace away. I had to mark Wilfried Zaha, which was an interesting experience, but
enjoyable.
Yeah, but I had a really good game. Played really well against him. Kept my place for this was because Paul's Conch was suspended, so he had, I think it was 2 games or 3 games, so I played all 3. I think we won 2 and drawn 1. But just the way that football is, he put Conch straight back in, so I think I played maybe 1 or 2 more in the cup. So only played 5 to the end of that season, and then I think that was pretty much it for my time at Leicester. I think I only played sort of 8 or 10 games at Leicester, something like that.
Yeah, and then moved on to Barnsley. You had a decent spell at Barnsley.
Yeah, Keith was there, so Keith signed me again.
Yeah, because he went there between Rochdale, didn't he? Yeah.
So he got his move to Barnsley. I went there. Really, they were struggling at the time. Keith only lasted, I think it was about 4 or 5 games whilst I was there, maybe a bit more. And then Dave Flitcroft got the job. And he got the job at Christmas time, him and Mickey Mellon, who's now Tranmere manager. And they brought another coach in called Martin Scott. And them 3 really created we were dead and buried at Christmas time. Like everybody's saying, they're going down, they're a poor side and all this sort of thing. And somehow we managed to scrape together a run that kept us in the Championship. And people will see the scenes when we played Huddersfield last game of the season, and Peterborough, unfortunately, one of my old teams, they were playing. I think it was QPR, Crystal Palace, or something like that, and they ended up getting beat. So we ended up, I think, drawing with Huddersfield, and basically walking around for the last 10 minutes of the game to make sure that we stayed up, because there was a chance that Huddersfield could have gone down as well. So incredible scenes, but a real, I'll keep going back to it, but he created a real sort of togetherness and we're in it together. If you're not buying in, then basically get off the boat. And we really put a good run together, and we had some great like senior pros, people that came in, like Jason Scotland did a fantastic job. Kept coming off the bench and scoring goals for us in the last minute. We had a real core team, lads that I knew and played with before. Steve Dawson, Dave Perkins, Martin Craney. Some real good players, but real good characters as well. When the chips were down, I think what got us through that season was a bit like the Rochdale days, was a real togetherness that we created from that Flickers had started when he got the job, because he was open and honest. He said, look, we're in this together. If we pull together, we've got half a chance, and we'll just give it our all when we'll do it together, win, lose or draw. It's basically all or nothing. The chances are we're going to go down, but if we're going to go down, we're going to go down not with a whimper. We're going to go down fighting, and we did. And we took it right to the last game of the season, and somehow, the Great Escape managed to do it.
How does the feeling of saving yourself from relegation compare to the feeling of promotion?
At that time, it was probably more relief and elation, because promotion's fantastic. It's great. It's celebrating success, and I suppose celebrating not getting relegated is probably frowned upon a little bit. But the Championships is like a holy grail for a lot of players, and to have one more season or however long it was, for any player to be able to stay in that Championship was a massive achievement. It's, like I say, the grounds that you go to, the atmospheres, the fans, it's a lot. There's so much more that it brings to the table than just staying up. Not to mention the financial side of it as well, because to stay in the Championship was great for each individual financially, whether they got released at the end of that season, wages and stuff like that. It helps you in every shape or form, because it's a short career. So don't get me wrong, the time is the opposite end of the spectrum. At the time I was at Rochdale when I was a young lad, from 21 to 24, I didn't have any responsibilities, and it was purely just, we got promoted, let's go on holiday and get drunk, basically. Whereas, at Barnsley, I was sort of getting a bit older, and I was more thinking about, the future and starting a family and all that sort of things, and you're paying a mortgage then, and you've got bills to pay and all that sort of thing. And not just that, it's also the fans, because whilst you celebrate a success, you feel partly responsible if you've played a big part and the team gets relegated. So for me, in a lot of ways, it was a more of a relief, but also a big sort of to come back from where we came from. Like I say, we think we're pretty much bottom of the league at Christmas, and to stay up, it was a real massive achievement. And I'd probably put it on par with that Rochdale promotion.
Did you then follow Keith over to Rochdale in his second spell? Because you went back to Rochdale then for a spell, didn't you?
Yep. So Keith re-signed me again. I owe Keith a lot because he kept putting faith in me. So he re-signed me again originally it was a 1-year deal, and then after that I signed a 2-year deal. But I only stayed for 2 years, I think it was, at that spell, because I ended up going on loan a few times to a few different clubs as well. Yeah,
back to Bury. I think there's a couple of literally 2 games at Bury, it says.
Yeah, crazy times. I suppose it's like anything in life. Probably like having a bit of an old, like when you see your old girlfriend or something like that, it's never going to be the same. And it was like that with, you see her from afar and you think, yeah, like I reckon we could make it work again. And then you get up close and you just think, it didn't work for, no, stop going back there. Do you know what I mean? Stay away. So that's what it was like. And it's the same situation when I went back to Rochdale, and mine and Hilly's relationship wasn't the same. He'd evolved as a person. I was 30-year-old, and I've not, I know I'd had a brief spell with him at Barnsley, but I'd evolved, and I was more of a grown man now, and I wasn't that young lad anymore. And Keith had become, he'd managed at a high level, and he'd come back down again. And Rochdale was very much his baby, and he managed a certain way. It wasn't the same way as he used to manage, and I kind of wanted him to probably manage that way, and he didn't want to do that. He'd sort of evolved and moved on, and he was going a different direction. I still went back and played, but like I said, it just wasn't the same. And it's probably a bad decision in that sense, because you just don't want it to affect your sort of personal standing and personal relationships. And it's not done, because we're still great friends. But it was a bit of a up and down time for me at that spell at Rochdale. And like you said, I went to Bury for the strangest brief spell. Went there originally for a loan to get games because Flickers was manager. But for whatever reason, you could just tell as soon as I walked through the door, it just wasn't going to be the same as we believed. They probably say, well, maybe I wasn't the same type of player that I used to be. Maybe I was, because I played at the Championship, I was a different type of player. Maybe even a different type of personality. I wouldn't think I was, but they might. But like I said, they probably changed the person. I probably changed the person, and it's probably was better for me not to do that. So yeah, went to Bury for 2 games, and then Lee Clark got the job at Blackpool. He rang me and just said, "Look, I'd love to have you on loan. We're almost certain to get relegated, because at that time Blackpool were cannon fodder. They were getting beat every week, and they knew they were getting relegated from the Championship. But it was a chance for me to go back and play in the Championship. So I think I went there for 6 games or something like that.
Yeah, 6 games.
Yeah, and then it was back to Rochdale after that. So yeah, very very sort of strange time in my career, but I suppose it's like anything in life. You sort of you know when you're not sort of the player that you used to be, but it's not because you physically can't do it. It's because mentally you don't love it as much as you used to, and that's where I was starting to realise that then, that the game wasn't probably it giving me enough, and it was time for me to stop dragging it out and sort of thinking, when you become a moaner in training and stuff like that, and you're constantly sort of looking at the clock thinking, it's time to go, and it's a chore to go into training. It's the best job in the world, but for whatever reason at that time in my life, I wasn't enjoying it. And for me, even though I played for a few more years afterwards, I was just sort of flogging a dead horse. And it was not a good decision in some ways to probably go back to Rochdale, and I probably should have took myself out of my comfort zone. But you make decisions, and it's all worked out well in the end. But I honestly believe that I kind of knew when I left Rochdale that the writing was on the wall for me, really.
Yeah, because you went to Flyde and then Bangor after that. Was just going through the motions there. Was just keeping yourself ticking over.
Yeah, because I suppose it's like any footballer. You sort of get to a point, and you're like, I'm not the player I was. I've not got the hunger. Because players can play till 40-year-old because physically they might start to struggle a little bit, but if they're mentally sharp and they're mentally, focused on the fact that, I can do this week in, week out still, then, and the drive's there and the hunger's there and the little chip on the shoulders there and the arrogance is there, because that's what, 99.9% of footballers have got that, even if you can speak to the most humble footballer in the world. But I can guarantee you, in his own mind, he's arrogant and he's got a chip on his shoulder, because that's who we are. That's the makeup of a footballer. That's what gets you from being from that 1% that make it. That's what sometimes is the deciding factor. Like I say, when I'd lost that, I knew that, because that was always my main driver. Like I said, there was better players than me that didn't make it, but mentally, I always managed to sort of pull myself through by just that sheer willingness not to fail. And once I'd lost that, went to Fylde under Dave Challoner and Colin Woodthorpe. We got promoted that season from the Conference North, which is a tough league. My first taste of non-league, real tough league. Good season, met some great lads there. But I knew from the first probably 2 or 3 games that I was going to struggle sort of, mentally to get through it, because I've been so used to the pro game. Some players can quite easily transition to that level. I just struggled a little bit mentally. And end of that season after promotion, Dave and Cole said to me, what you think? And I just said, well, Bangor have offered me a deal, and and Bangor were doing like a hybrid system then, where it was just, you only trained, I think it was like 1 night a week and then 1 day or something like that. So I knew I had to do something after football, and it's one of the hardest things you have to do, because a lot of football players will sort of get to a point and they'll be like, well, what do I do now? And it's the generic stuff of coaching or being an agent. And Bangor was good for me in that sense, because I just had a baby. Plus, I could sort of use that spare time to study and try and educate myself and put myself into a position over that year where potentially I could, if I was going to call it a day, technically from the full-time game, I could put myself in a position where I could go into a job and not have to potentially worry too much about money and that's straight away, because if I came out the game and just stopped altogether and I had no qualifications, I'd obviously have to probably choose a job that I didn't really want to do, whereas that it gave me the opportunity at Bangor to sort of plan ahead and sort of work out what I wanted to do and try and get the necessary qualifications.
Yeah, and what is it you're doing now?
I'm a financial advisor.
Right.
So we work with the PFA. We're partners with the PFA for financial advice, but we're also obviously we're IFAs, which is independent. We work predominantly with sports people called Pro Sport Wealth. We do have private clients as well, but predominantly we have footballers that are our clients, which is fantastic for me, because you're still getting around to see the players and having them sort of conversations, and it's also, I can use my experience and you've got a certain level of trust with players, to sort of educate them about what they need to do to sort of prolong the finances after football, because we're currently in a pandemic, but there's possibly in the future there could be another pandemic, and that's the problem that football is going to have, because the financial preparations that they're making is a massive problem, and it's having an effect on the mental health problems as well, because and lads are coming out of the game and they're not being able to cope with the fact of not having a job or not being able to sort of have the same lifestyle. It's easier said than done to say, well, surely they can adjust. Well, it's just not that straightforward to say, well, you've been spending this and you've been doing this for everybody. Now all of a sudden I'm going to give you this and you've got to go and work for it as well. And they're like, well, that it's just there's so much more factors to sort of just finishing football than people actually realise. But yeah, I think I'm in a good position to sort of help and sort of guide players, try and make them do the right things, and try and prepare, because you've got to start somewhere, and I don't care if you're 18 or 35. Small changes, little bits here and there, can make a massive difference. It can allow you to prepare for any career that you want to do after football. So that's what I've been doing for the past, I think, 18 months, 2 years now.
Right, and enjoying it as well.
Yeah.
Sounds like you are.
Yeah, it's never going to be like kicking a ball. Sometimes it takes for you to come out of football, to actually look back and say, you know what, it was a cracking ride. I'll never be one of them people that say, oh, I wish I could go back and being a footballer, because I had my time and I wouldn't change it for the world. And football owes me nothing. I owe football. So it gave me a great upbringing, allowed me to do everything that I wanted to do. Give me a great start in life. and has allowed me to transition and do what I want to do. By earning half decent money at some points in my career and getting a nice house and stuff like that. So, like I say, I owe football. It doesn't owe me anything. So give me 16 seasons as a pro, which I wouldn't change for the world. So yeah.
And then I read, are you still playing at Ramsbottom now?
Yep.
Yeah. So is that their part time as well at the Ramsbottom?
Yeah. We we only train sort of once, twice a week. Honestly, it's mad how your career goes full circle, because after left Bangor, I was thinking, well, I can't bother playing now, and I don't really want to go and play like proper non-league.
Yeah.
And then Mark Fell was the manager, and I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to play for a club, I might as well play for the club closest to me. So he rang me and said, yeah, it's literally 5 minutes from my house. So I thought, God, I'll give it a go, and I'll do pre-season, and I'll play a few games, and if this is just me speaking plainly, if the standard's crap and I don't like it and people are kicking me all the time, then I'll just pack it in.
Yeah.
And I can't. The last 2 years, I've had 1 3/4 season, because obviously this one got cut short.
Yeah.
It probably reminds me of when I first started playing football, how enjoyable and how refreshing it can be to just run around with a good group of lads. Like I said, the standard's not great sometimes, but at other times it's surprisingly good. Pitches aren't great, facilities aren't great, but that's what football's all about. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I've loved the fans, interacting with them. I love the social side of it, because you get to have 5 or 6 pints after a game and stuff like that. You get to mingle with the fans. You meet some great lads. There's no egos. There's no attitudes. In the modern game, unfortunately, there's a lot of chips on shoulders. There's a lot of egos and attitudes. Sorry, just getting water. There's a lot of egos and a lot of attitudes. And that's another thing that sort of I started to become a bit disillusioned with when I was a senior pro. Young lads sort of not giving you any respect, and when I look back, I suppose you can't really demand respect because they don't have to give you respect. But I was always brought up when I was a young pro or a young YTS that if you didn't clean the boots right, or you didn't sweep the stands right, or you didn't clean the dressing room, or you spoke back to a senior pro, well, you were getting a beating, or you were getting scrubbed in the showers, or something bad was happening to you, basically. And really bad. But the game's changed, the people have changed, generations have changed. So I became a little bit disillusioned. But going back to the non-league, there's no attitude, there's no egos. You can shout at somebody, they can shout at you back. You have a pint after the game. It's proper football, and like I say, I've loved it. It's a good little club, ran by great people, and like I said, last 2 years have really ignited my love for the game again.
And they're in, is it Evo State Northern Prem?
I think it's the Northern Prem or the West or something like that.
Yeah.
It's split into about 19 different leagues because
as soon as you get past, we as a website, we're moving down to, I think they're level 8, so we've got like about 5 teams in level 8,
right?
That we're going to start covering, because we did sort of finish at Northern National League North,
right?
We've chose to go two more down.
Yeah.
But once it starts getting there, it just ladders out on it all over. It's like a web of divisions. But hopefully we're going to get down there a little bit more often next season. Whenever that starts, is there any news on your side? Have you heard anything? I spoke to the
manager, and he said they had a meeting last week, and they're potentially talking about a September start for our league.
Right.
That's preliminary talks. They were going to have I think there's another meeting next week to discuss it again. But that's where they were hinting at sort of a September start. Obviously dependent on what happens if there's a second wave or whatever happens, over the next few months. That's where they're sort of gauging at. I think I'd assume that most of sort of like other steps would be probably considering late August, early September probably starts, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? So I think. It'd be nice to get some clarity, but I suppose it's like anything at the minute. There is no sort of clarity because everything's just completely out of sync. So I keep saying to myself, I keep considering retiring completely and having a young family. But my missus says to me, she said, "Don't retire," and I was like, "Well, I'm thinking about it," and she just says, "Well, when it's done, it's done." Do you know what I mean? As long as you're not making a fool of yourself, and as long as you're you're not getting injured, and touch wood, I'm quite lucky in that sense. Keep playing, because I'm still fit, still enjoy it, still playing well. just turned 35. I'd like to think I've got one season definitely in me. And like I said, that's last season got cut short, and we were doing really well with second league. Us and Workington, we're going for the title. So yeah, hopefully, you know, I have a good season next year with Rami, who, you know, probably deserve a promotion. You know, like I say, really good club, run by great people, and the manager's doing a good job. Great set of lads, and the chairman Harry, who's built the ground up from I think they were in Manchester League when he first formed them, and he's a character. He's set in his ways, but he's honestly, he's one of a kind. A real sort of old school mentality. Says it how it is. You know, does no airs and graces sort of thing. And I love it. I love going down there. Like I say, win, lose or draw, you go in the bar after whichever beer, and you speak to the fans. You know, you socialise with the other players from the other teams, and it reminds me exactly like, you know, I speak to my dad about it when he used to play, go and have a few drinks afterwards, and then speak to you know, it's what we used to do, go in the players' lounge after the game and stuff like that. And I think it's just like, it's proper football, which I love. I love the whole that side of it.
Yeah, definitely. Are you keeping fit as well through lockdown, or it's just like me and just completely left?
No, I've been doing a bit, to be fair. You know, we're lucky because I can work from home, which is taking the positive out of a really bad situation. Obviously, I had another baby 10 weeks ago, so she was born in lockdown. So I've been able to help out with Abby at home, and I've also obviously been able to, you know, have my meetings and work from home as well, which has been great. But yeah, I've got pull-up bar and a few push-up things, and then I go for the odd run. Did a half marathon, which I've never done before. I thought, you know, I'll crack on and do 22 kilometers, see how I get on. Went okay, and then been doing little bits here and there. So yeah, I'm still trying to take over, because for me personally, always been a technically a professional athlete. If I always say healthy body, healthy mind for me, because I think if I wasn't in that mind frame, I think I'd struggle. Somebody that's always been active, always been fit. It's like some days if I don't do anything, I can sort of sense myself getting a bit sort of not stir crazy, but a bit sort of mentally not as clear and focused as I do if I do some exercise.
Yeah, I think it is. You've really got to. I mean, I've had to pull myself out, obviously, with bike ride.
Yeah.
Before that, I'd done absolutely nothing, and I can feel it. You know what I mean? So yeah, keeping yourself nice and fit, especially up where you live as well. There's plenty of hills up there, isn't there?
Absolutely, yeah. I've been right in the sticks, aren't
I? Yeah, 100%. Tom, it's been an absolute pleasure having a chat with you, mate.
Loved really
it. Really good chat, really good insight into your career. I'll get down to Rami next year, and we'll have one of them 5 pints after.
Absolutely. Throw down 5 pints of Moretti, no problem.
Easy.
Top man.
Cheers, Tom. Thanks a lot, mate.